Did you know that there is a solution to dramatically decrease gun violence that both conservatives and liberals can get behind? It involves less government and more personal accountability, so it saves taxpayers' money and puts the power in the hands of the people. I think this is something you're going to want to share with your friends and family. There's a precedent here, so stay with me. Treat the gun crisis the way we treat the opiate crisis. Hold not only the user accountable, but also the manufacturers. When we hold the gun manufacturers responsible, we force them to define what their product is used for. If rifles are not intended for mass shootings of innocent people, then the rifle is malfunctioning. And when a car malfunctions, we go after the car's manufacturer. So why not hold gun manufacturers accountable for gun malfunctions? If a mass shooting is not a product malfunction, rather a user error, then it requires more user education, which the manufacturer should also be responsible for. The simplest way to protect our children from mass shootings while preserving the Second Amendment is to treat gun use as we treat car use. Just as we require driver's education, car safety, driver instruction courses, we'd require gun education, gun safety, and gun storage and usage courses, in addition to license, registration, and insurance. Gun violence is now the #1 cause of death in children. This is the right idea at the right time because both sides of the political aisle are targets for gun violence, simply because they are human beings who walk this plane. Therefore, both sides of the political aisle want to protect their children. I know this solution will work because it already has. Hi, I'm Sage Justice, and in 2019 I wrote a piece for the publication Blunt Moms entitled Ensuring a Gun Solution, and by 2023, San Jose, California passed the Gun Harm Reduction Ordinance, requiring all guns to be insured. Now all of California and New York are considering similar laws, and today I'd like to propose an addition to this law. Responsible gun owners respect the NRA, and they would be willing to pay a nominal fee to have their guns insured if it meant a dramatic end to mass shootings and ensuring safer lives for all their children. After all, guns are an equal opportunity killer of kids. Whether their parents are conservative or liberal, Democrat or Republican, gun owner or not, bullets don't care who you voted for. Gun insurance is not a liberal concept. It originated with the National Rifle Association, the NRA, who had already set a precedent for this when they sold gun insurance for $31.95 per month back in 2019 for liability gun insurance. Insuring guns would place the onus of gun regulation into the hands of insurance companies, immediately elevating the screening process of gun ownership in order for manufacturers to avoid financial liability associated with mass shooting deaths covered by insurance companies. So if every insurance company had to put a price tag on every life it was insuring, they would pay far more attention to who owns a gun, how many guns they own, and what those guns are going to be used for. This is how it would work. The proposed gun insurance would be based around gun usage, not gun ownership, so no Second Amendment rights would be taken away. Gun owners who don't want to pay can opt out by taking responsibility for how they store their guns and who they sell them to. So just as car insurance rewards good drivers and costs less for smaller cars, a small handgun registered to a responsible gun owner would equal affordable insurance. And large commercial trucks require a special license and extra insurance to drive, and so the same might apply to assault rifles. The insurance screening process to own a firearm would be at least as stringent as a life insurance screening, After all, shouldn't the requirements to insure a gun be at least as stringent as the requirements to insure a life? Families who want to opt out of paying for gun insurance could do so by taking full responsibility for their gun safety, transfer of ownership, and usage by others, just as we do with cars that people own but don't insure. This would require that they raise their children with the understanding that if they want to own a gun once they're an adult, they cannot have a criminal record, be accused of domestic violence or child abuse, or ever threaten to harm themselves or another. Now, people can still hoard their guns like they hoard their cars. Americans have the freedom to own as many cars as they'd like, but to drive those cars, they must adhere to the requirements of the law: license, registration, education, and insurance. Allow gun owners to do the same. This gives gun owners the freedom to bear arms while creating protective laws against mass shootings. Now, under this rule, if an uninsured gun is used to kill innocent people, the manufacturer as well as the gun owner would be liable for the death and destruction, and whoever used the gun. This would incentivize gun owners to keep their firearms locked up and not sell them privately to some rando on Craigslist or so-and-so's cousin's friend's uncle who has not been properly screened for a history of domestic abuse or mental instability. This is how we teach personal accountability and encourage responsibility, topics I cover in the books I've written. Everyone wins from this plan. Gun owners keep their guns. Citizens become safer because gun manufacturers offer more protection. The only people the government has to regulate are the manufacturers. That saves taxpayer money. It's the real trickle-down effect. People regulate the government regulates the manufacturers regulate a DMV for guns, a DFE, Department of Firearm Education, licensing, registration, insurance. Then insurance regulates the screening process that helps keep us all safe through standards and personal accountability. And then accountability helps raise humans who understand the power of guns and the reverence for the human lives they face before them. To those who say gun control doesn't work, look at Chicago, I reply, gun control does work. Look at Australia. And now before you say, what about guns made with 3D printing? They won't fall under this. I'd like you to ask yourself how many guns used in mass shootings are from 3D printing. We can no longer allow ourselves to fall under the spell of analysis paralysis because we can't solve all the gun problems all at once. We can't stop ourselves from crossing a single bridge just because we have yet to figure out how we will cross all bridges. The truth is that any gun safety measure works better than none. Each builds on the other, like Legos, until they actually do make a difference and start working in a way that we can perceive. Now, we've been here before and we've succeeded. We can look back at how the American tobacco industry was systematically altered by a series of seemingly small acts that led to significant changes, and use that as a guide on how to protect the Second Amendment while also preventing mass shootings. Cigarettes used to be everywhere in America. Now they aren't. And no one has pushed back on protective legislation against secondhand smoke because we're all better off. People who want to smoke still have that freedom. They just no longer can impose the risks of smoking onto others. That's where we need to take gun freedoms. When the FDA required tobacco companies to print the Surgeon General's warning directly on each package of cigarettes that cigarettes cause cancer, it was not enough to get people to quit smoking, just like these shootings aren't enough to get people to stop with their guns. But shutting down public places where people could smoke was. It used to be illegal on TV to advertise cigarettes directed at children in cartoons. Now it's not. Restaurants, airplanes, buses, and trains used to have smoking and non-smoking sections. Now they don't. Tobacco companies used to be able to sell cigarettes to minors. Now they're prohibited from selling to anyone under the age of 21. One Lego law at a time can help change the gun ownership landscape, and everyday citizens have the power to make this happen. People who want to smoke still have that freedom. They no longer have the freedom to impose the risks of smoking onto others. Gun owners should have the freedom to own guns without imposing the risk of death to innocent bystanders. Here's the role you play. We have far more power to create change than we are showing the courage and integrity to use. We type out thoughts and prayers for the victims of gun violence on social media platforms, and then we return to our video games where we kill to relax. Humans are desensitized to violence from the television and films we watch, the music lyrics we sing along to, and the video games we play. When are we going to check ourselves and look in the mirror, take responsibility for our own contributing ripple effects, and change our behavior? Now, here's the role the government plays. If we want to understand why our government allows gun violence to persist, we have to have the courage to accept it's because our government profits from gun violence. Academic author and activist Curry Peterson Smith is quoted as saying, "The U.S. manufactures and sells more weapons than any other country. It invests in developing the most lethal weapons in the world and using them to arm its military, its police, and its allies, and makes those weapons extremely available to its own population." Some of America's largest gun and ammunition makers have seen their stock prices swell since the last massacre. If we want to stop driving the sale of automatic weapons, we have to stop threatening to take them away. Human beings are driven by reactance to survive. Threatening to take a person's freedoms away makes them fight that much harder to keep it. Instead, when we can get gun manufacturers to self-govern gun safety through insurance in order to avoid financial liability associated with mass shooting deaths, citizens keep their freedoms. Children are more safe. And we can push this through to Congress because, let's face it, our government is more interested in making a profit than it is in protecting its citizens. According to Robert Reich, 51 members of Congress and their spouses own up to $5.8 million in defense contractor stocks. If we as a country are promoting and profiting from gun violence in the stock market and media, is there not a conflict of interest to end that gun violence in our schools? How do we isolate foreign gun violence, the sale of lethal aid weapons, from domestic gun violence, the sale of automatic rifles to the general public, when the same manufacturers, lobbyists, and stockholders profit from both? If we shift the profits from the manufacturing of guns to the insurance of guns, we could possibly create greater profit, resulting in more responsible gun owners and less unwanted deaths from gun violence. When presidents of the United States, regardless of political affiliation, say they want to end gun violence, but continue to pander to a legislative branch of government that accepts money from gun lobbyists, maintains foreign contracts for weapons, and whose members of Congress profit from gun manufacturing stock, the words come across as mere performative gestures. If we're going to end the crisis of gun violence in America, it's going to be at the hands of everyday citizens, not a government that is literally invested in perpetuating gun violence. Here's my idea. Department of Firearms Education. It's time to stand together and build a DFE, a Department of Firearms Education, modeled off of the DMV, in which we require every gun owner to attend and pass mandatory gun education courses and license, obtain a license, registration, and insurance in order to operate a firearm. This would come with an express understanding that any death caused by that gun would be punishable by law, in which manufacturer, gun owner, and firearm user would be held accountable. Please pass this video on to your family, your friends, your local congressperson, and remember the power of one, and that you are the one with the power. I'm Sage Justice with Sage Words, and I really appreciate you listening. Thank you.